And something that really, really greatly helps us continue this work, this discussion is absolutely free and will remain free, but something that keeps this work going is filling out our evaluation. So I will send you the evaluation in an email after this event, but I will also put it in the chat box before we close the Zoom call. So if you could fill that out, it makes a huge difference for us. And we also love to hear your feedback. It's also a great place to give a shout out to presenters. So thank you. And before we start all of our Farming for Justice events, we do a land acknowledgement. Like I said before, Groundswell is based in Ithaca, New York, and we're on unceded Guyancono territory. We think it's really important to acknowledge the land theft and genocide that happened and the fact that we are all on stolen land. But we also think it's really important to acknowledge the fact that Indigenous people are still present in all of our communities today and to highlight the work that they're doing in our present day. And we also love sharing this really, really great resource. If you don't know what Indigenous people are present in your region or anything about the history, this is a great place to start. And it's native-land.ca. So we highly recommend you checking out this resource if you haven't already and you don't know who's present in your region currently. We also want to take a moment to say that Groundswell stands with the Black Lives Matter movement. Even though there's not a lot of media coverage, we know that protests have still been happening every day. And we also just want to send love and healing to our neighbors over in Rochester who are now dealing with the grief of Daniel Prude. And we just want to say we still stand in solidarity and wishing them love and healing. And now I want to pass it over to Alexis, Esposito, and Joe Soto. They're joining us from the Traditional Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Healing. I'm really, really excited about this talk. Alexis and Joe are wonderful members of our community, and I'm really excited about this presentation, especially since Alexis sent me the breakout question earlier, and I love it. And I don't want to give too much of an introduction because I know that they're going to tell you all about their work. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to welcome Joe and Alexis. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to everyone on the call who is joining us for this discussion today.
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
I'm Alexis.
I'm Joe.
And we are two of the three co-directors at the Traditional Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Healing. Number 3 is currently at home with her mom, Maya, Joe's daughter, and she's also the youth leader in the organization as well. So I am going to start with just a screen share. So we'll do a short presentation and then we will show you about a half hour or so of a short video. Well, it's not really short, but a video that we made in collaboration with the community which we are a part of in Newfield, Arausi Baniku Maisi, Guani, and the Finger Lakes Permacultural Institute. Today we will be talking about Indigenous land management and cultural preservation through working with the land and the significance that is culturally on the greater scale. So I'm going to start with the screen share. Oh, okay. That's a great idea.
So, you know, it's pretty normal for us to really open up. We just don't always jump into things, but so I'm just going to open it up with a short prayer and land acknowledgement to the Guayacono people that we have a relationship with, and then we'll get on with it. I'm Taino from Caguana, Puerto Rico. My mother's ancestors come from there. She was raised in little other parts of Puerto Rico, which I can get into later. But I'm going to open it up. Grandfather Creator, it is I, your grandson, Cascatewasis. I ask you to look down upon us today as we get ready to do these things, Grandpa, like that, in that way, Grandpa. I want to acknowledge the ancestors of the Guachicio people whose land we stand on, and we steward, Grandpa, like that, in a good way, that we may all come together with a good mind, Grandpa, like that, to discuss these things that are of importance in these days, Grandpa, like that, in that way, Grandpa. I ask you, Grandpa, to watch over each and every one of our relatives that are behind these screens, Grandpa, like that, in that way, Grandpa. I want to thank you for all the blessings that you cast down upon us and our relatives around us, Grandpa, like that, in that way, Grandpa, so that we may be able to continue these discussions in a good way. With that I say, I hope.
No. Okay, starting my screen share here. Well, obviously we've already gone through this part. We are the Traditional Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Healing. So a little bit about us. So I'm just going to read you our mission and vision statement, and then I will give it back to Joe because he left off in a really good place. So at the Traditional Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Healing, we exist to provide a place in which all people can seek refuge, sharing an understanding of the world through traditional culture and healing practices while providing and maintaining a culturally safe place for the Indigenous community. The Traditional Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Healing believes in the preservation of Indigenous culture through a matrilineal-based society, community as well. And so like I was saying, I am one of the co-directors, Joe's one of the co-directors, and Joe's daughter, Maya, is the other co-director. We are a project of the Latino Civic Association of Tompkins County. And so I'm gonna give it back to Joe so he can finish introducing himself because he is a very large part of what we do as being the elder of this organization.
Again, I'd like to say greetings and thank you to everyone that's come on board. Yeah, my name is actually my Christian name is Jose Soto. My tribal name is Cascatehuases. I was raised Cree. I was part of the 60 Scoop. I managed to go from the Bronx to Alberta, Canada. So some of my teachings are Cree teachings, and some of my teachings are Taino teachings. That being said, you know, the creation of TCIKH, you know, was a collaboration of my daughter, Alexis, and myself, and how can we come around and do seed saving, food sovereignty, and work on some of the issues that we have in our community today, particularly around race relations and things like that. That being said, also, I come from a mixed background. You know, I come from a background where I was at one point believed that I was Cree, and then believing that I was Taino. So I was, you know, kind of raised mixed up, but I was always raised in indigenous communities from as long as I can remember. So we try to bring that knowledge base and those teachings to what we're doing. And a couple of years ago, Alexis and I approached me and asked what we can do to help. And I said, well, this is what we can do. Alexis at that point, you know, got involved and met some people that did seed saving. And lo and behold, you know, this kind of taken a life of its own. And so, like, we're in the thicket of it. In this area, we try to grow relationships with the Guachicio people, who are the traditional stewards of this land. So we made it our business to develop relationships with them and with the other parts of the Confederacy. So there's nothing that we haven't done that hasn't gone by them that they don't know that we're aware that we're doing and things like that, because we stay in constant contact with them. And looking for ways and ideas and how to involve our relatives, you know, because this is their territory. for the moment, that's all I got. I'm also, I'm also, you know, one of the spiritual elders for my community. I'm more a spiritually inclined and based person. I'm not really a politician. So a lot of this is very, very new and very educational at the same time, you know. I've noticed that in our area and in some of our communities, one of the things that really attracted me to it was the enthusiasm that a lot of our younger generation have. They really want to learn a different way. And I'm trying to seize that opportunity to do that, and to do that in a way where we're bringing that good mind, that good thought, those good feelings, and also at the same time help our communities heal from intergenerational trauma. I'm going to turn it over to Alexis.
So I guess going from there, you know, as far as like, you know, where the Traditional Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Healing started was also this question of, you know, how can we really help our people? And then also understanding that the help doesn't stop just within our community. You know, the work that we do is for everybody. And it's not just exclusive to the Indigenous community or Taino people, but it's open to people from all nations and all of our relations. And so where that went was this conversation about returning to nature and the importance of returning to nature and where that really takes us in our lives and how that assists us through healing and also helps us assert our freedom as human beings, which I interpret as the word sovereignty. You know, that's outside of all of the systems that we understand as governmental, colonial, you know, systemically racist systems. And so that's where the Traditional Center really kind of came about, and figuring out how do we incorporate our culture into these types of programs for the community without giving, you know, what is ours and sacred away as well, because there is that sensitivity that we have due to the common practice of cultural appropriation. So the way that this has kind of played out is right now the Traditional Center is, or TCIKH, is comprised of all volunteers, me, Joe, Maya, as well as another family who has been serving as kind of like farm security, farm maintenance, farm help in trade for being able to reside, you know, on the land which we use. And there are about 5 more of those volunteers, which has been really amazing, as well as the people who have come over the years to assist in planting, harvesting, coming to our workshops, helping us create workshops, helping us find people to come to our workshops. And so I want to say that everything that we're doing is because of the community which we are a part of, and it doesn't happen without the community. And so overall, the way that this has kind of played out is kind of created 2 different aspects culturally from which we draw everything that we do, which is the farm, which we call konuko, and where we share our knowledge, which is kane, and those are both Taino words. So this kind of goes to the next slide here. I guess I'll just read it. In Taino, kane refers to a communal structure where people gather to share knowledge. At TCIKH, the kane is an intentional space created for this and to have talking circles and to invite nations to share knowledge and to practice traditional crafts. The konuko means the food plot that is central to the community. It nourishes the people by bringing nutrients and medicine to the people. And I don't want to speak for Joe, but one of the big teachings that he's always brought to me and to the community is that in order to move forward, we have to understand what our ancestors did. And it's not a matter of bringing us back to the past to be like our ancestors, but bringing those teachers forward so that we're able to move forward in the society that we're living in. And so the way that we have done that as far as cultural cultural preservation is through Kane and Kunuko.
Yeah, and through those practices of, bringing those teachings forward, I think a lot of times we've run into the misconception in people, and especially in particularly colonialized people, that we're going to bring them back into time, and that's not what we do. And I think in our practices, when we, in particular when we do trauma work, is we bring those practices that was once taught to our ancestors knew, we bring those teachings forward into the present. And we try to do that in a mindful sort of kind of way. Whether it be talking about seeds, talking about the ceremonies that go around seeds, if seeds are sacred to us, or, we're doing trauma work, or we're sharing knowledge. We always try to kind of like, to the best of our ability, to bring those teachings that were handed down to me and to my relatives in a way that's mindful, and a way that it can be actually put to practice in the present.
Yeah. And so basically the intersection of the Kane and Kunuko is the workshop that we do, which is called Healing Trauma, A Return to Nature. And it brings forward teachings around healing and our healing as human beings, and the importance of connecting to nature. And so we're not really going to go into that today. What we are going to go into is more around seed saving, the cultural importance of saving seeds, some of the land management practices that we practice. And so in a moment, I'm going to start playing a video, which we, made for the Finger Lakes Permacultural Week here in Ithaca. And it's about, I think, 35 minutes or so of a clip. And then after that, we can do the, and a discussion question, which I will reveal after the video. Is there anything else you want to say before we start the video? Okay, cool. So I'm going to start it, and I will keep my eyes on the chat box in case there's any playback difficulties. Hold on.
Hey, Alexis, I think you have to go to Zoom and go to the More and hit play audio from computer.
Currently, this year we had a drought. Otherwise, this does kind of fill up and flow with the way that the land is, and we were hoping to get like some sort of sump pump or bilge pump in here to pump water for irrigation. And so basically we have these series of 3 tanks. They're 275 gallons each. And the way that they're set up is you could turn them all on and you would get really, really high pressure. Or you can just turn one on, but they're all connected. And there's a main valve at the end where even if they're all on, you can make sure it's off and control the flow that way. So low flow, high pressure, whatever you want to look at it. And it's kind of going through this little tree windbreak here. And this is our milk bath, where we grow our food for seed saving, for nourishment, for the community. This is it. So, as you can see, it's minimally weeded, And so here we have the Ponca blue corn. The seed was shared with me by a friend, an acquaintance in Lincoln, Nebraska. And this is my second season growing a large amount of them. This is a extra large amount that I've never grown before, and we as a family have never grown this much corn in a year. So this is really beautiful and exciting. And so basically the blue corn, it's not a sweet corn, it's a grain corn. It's a dent corn. It's like a flinty dent corn, so you can use it for, soup like hominy or pozole, or you can keep it dry and grind it up and use it for flour or cornmeal. So it's a really beautiful corn with a beautiful cultural story as well. In recent history, in the plains area, you got all them pipelines, and the Keystone pipeline was proposed to run through and running through some Ponca territory at the very least. And so the people understood their rights and started planting fields of corn in the proposed pathways of the pipeline. And while not getting into the gritty details of it, the implications of that are pretty great, and really held off the workers for the pipeline and the whole system. And I think last year, the year before that, I've lost my sense of time a little bit, but they won that, and they called them seeds of resistance. So I feel grateful to be growing these here and asserting our sovereignty in this land. Even though we're not Cayuga, we are indigenous, we are sovereign people. By us growing our food, that's us asserting our sovereignty. So we just have one corn type here, because corn tends to cross-pollinate. So as you can see here, we have a baby cob. Yeah, right there. So the silks, and then if you, maybe you're not able to see it, but if I tap the stalk, you can kind of see the pollen in the wind, but not totally. But these are the cornflowers. So this is obviously the male part of the plant. Maybe it's not obvious. It's obvious to me. This is the male part of the plant. This guy was a little stunted. It wouldn't have hurt to weed that out. But this here is the tassel, and it provides the pollen. And it's really beautiful. And the smell of a cornfield is just really simply amazing. So yeah, this is a better one because all the flowers are hanging, right? You can see that. And then you can barely see it on the leaves here, but there's like these little tiny specks of dust. Those are the corn pollen fallen. And yeah, this one's kind of a nice one to look at here because it's kind of, going through its process. This is the silks, and obviously this is still silking, so that means not all of the not all of these got pollen on them, because once they get pollen on them, it'll go through this reproduction process, and the little pollen will kind of go down these little tubes. And you can barely see here, but every corn silk is it's like a little tube, like a fallopian tube, and that pollen is like the egg, and it's got to travel down through it. And once it goes all the way down that pollen tube, it gets fertilized, and then they start to dry off because they don't need any more. So the corn silk starts to dry, and then you get this beautiful cob. So because the way this is, it needs a little help for more pollen. Not quite sure like what is the best practice right now, but I like to improvise. So there's a bunch of pollen on this leaf here, so I'm just kind of wiping it. Because, I want it to fertilize, the more fertilization that occurs, the more seeds we get. So here is our beans that are part of a seed rematriation project being run by Chris Hubbard. And so general seed protocol for Indigenous people is you don't sell seeds. You don't sell babies, or you shouldn't sell babies, right? So you don't sell seeds. And you protect these seeds with your life. And each seed variety is a certain lineage that also needs to maintain its purity, its diversity, but also its purity. And I can go all into kinship systems of Indigenous people, but I don't want to talk about that right now. So basically, we've got a few different varieties here. And what's going to happen is the seeds will ripen and mature. And this guy was so big, I guess it fell over. It was starting to come up all the way on the top. But eventually the seed pods become brown and hard. We don't have any of that yet. And then you save the seed. This is a Hidatsa seed. Hidatsa is from the 3 affiliated tribes over in the plains: Mandan, Hidatsa, Rikara. This here is a succotash bean. It's a Ojibwe. So we've got kind of a few of each. Oh, look at that, how pretty. This is Comanche. Yeah, pretty yellow, yellow bean pods. That one there is Hidatsa. This one is the succotash again. This is the succotash. You can tell they grow upwards pretty vigorously. Like this one. This one here is going all the way up. It was like that one over there, and the other one kind of fell. This is I think this is the Comanche. This is holy smokes. These are Narragansett. They're little people beans. And I swear it was like just a couple weeks ago they were like up to here. So it's really special. Yes, this guy. See this? I would get sad about this if we only had planted like 50 corns or something, but this tells me genetically it wasn't the best stock. It got a little too heavy for itself. So I'll probably rip that ear off and see how they're looking, because that happened pretty recently, in the last day or so. Yep, so these are the little people beans. And so all of those are part of that seed rematriation project. So what will happen when we get that harvest is I'll probably send Chris back much more than he sent me. I basically got between 4 and 10 beans per variety. So I'll send him back some, and he'll collect more, and eventually he'll have enough to give back to his tribe. I'll keep probably about enough for us to grow, but the thing with seed keeping and seed saving is, you don't need to buy hundreds of beans, hundreds of seeds. Like, that's not how this process happens. You know, it doesn't happen over a year or a couple of years. You got to give yourself a few years, because you start with a little bit, and so you start growing out those seeds for your area, and those seeds adapt to the space that you're growing them in, like this Ponca corn. So it's pretty beautiful and awesome. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of this area. This is growing some of these out for seed, but it's not so much for rematriation as it is for us to keep growing out our own seed bank. So we'll come back to that this afternoon. You know, it's real beautiful right now because you get the squash blossoms that are open. We've got more bean squash, tobacco, and amaranth. And that's basically what we've grown this year. And it's been a beautiful, beautiful process. So, the next part of this, we'll talk more about pollination and genetic diversity of seeds. So we're back. It's later in the day than anticipated, but every day here is a huge surprise. Been a little behind in some weeding, as you can tell. So basically, you know, what I really wanted to get into earlier was some basics around seed saving. And other than having seed to grow food, you know, some important aspects of seed saving. So I have such deep connections to these plants, and I don't really know where to start, but I'm gonna start with you know, our beans. So over here we have some beautiful Seneca burnt house beans. They're a type of black bean, and these were shared with us from some of our friends and relatives, the Onondaga Nation, and the same people that shared them with us are also huge inspirations for us, and also have been instrumental in our understanding and knowledge around saving seeds. You know, so Angela Ferguson and April Tarbell over in Onondaga, and then for myself, Rowan White has also provided a platform in which I could get started with saving seeds, and has been there in support since. So with these beans, they have these cute little flowers, so you can see them better over with this bean here. But I have some beans in 3 different states, right? So actually we're gonna start way over yonder. So these huge weeds. So these beans here were shared with us by some friends of ours. They come from Mexico. They're in Guachicio, and they have family that lives there primarily, and still farms food and You know, they save their seeds from year to year, right? So these beans here are called Guachicio Bio Beans, and they were shared with us this year, and for me it became a much deeper connection when I started finding out a little bit more about my own ancestral lineage and, you know, some of my people coming from a very similar area. So these beans became a very ancestral thing, and you know, that's what happens with seeds when you really start doing it. You know, stuff like that happens, and it's real beautiful. So I love looking at this. This is our milpa, right? And so everything's growing together, and I'm just, you know, I see things kind of intertwine deeper each day. So right now there's still no blossoms on these beans, which is really sad. But in the same token, they've never been grown anywhere except for the farm and the families which they come from in Mexico. So I'm not surprised. But regardless, you know, we're talking about pollination. I don't know if you can see it, just barely, right? On these leaves, you can kind of see some of that like yellow stuff, which is pollen, right? So I presume there must be bees that hang around here all day, and because that's squash pollen, right? And that's how they pollinate. But these beans here have no flowers. They're still just growing and growing, and I'm learning. You know, I'm learning about what everything needs, and these are new beans to me, so I'm okay with that. And so then the next phase of the bean, you know, as it's growing, right? It's got the will to reproduce. So over here, these black beans are in that phase where they're still some kashaw squashes, really vigorous. So these black beans are still flowering. They don't have a lot of bean pods yet. But as you see here, this is kind of like right, that's the flower. And that looks like the flower after it's been pollinated. And these buds have not opened yet. So basically what happens here is with beans, they're self-pollinating, which means they're entirely asexual. They don't need nobody's help for nothing. So by the time that this flower opens like this, it's already been pollinated. Pretty cool. So with beans, and what I've learned why beans are such a good first seed to really start seed keeping and seed saving with is it's difficult, not impossible, but it's really difficult for them to cross-pollinate. Because essentially the bug would have to get into the flower before it opens with the pollen of another bean, which is really highly unlikely. So I have a barrier of other things that pollinators really like, which is squash, in between each different variety of bean to basically, you know, they become disenchanted. By the time they hit the squash, they're all about that squash, right? And so then after the bean pollinates itself and goes through the flowering process, and the flower, you know, then goes to seed, what we get is a bean pod. And so these over here have some tiny ones. So these are real cute. Oh, look at that. Pretty. So this is our beautiful pollinator. See, these are the beans that are pollinating themselves. These guys have just opened. These ones have already opened and have put out some pods. See how tiny and cute they are? And then those pods keep growing and growing and growing. And I'm trying to find a bigger one. Oh yeah, this is a good one. So these beans get pretty big and they're beautiful. I can show you the beans at the end, right? The seeds, they're absolutely beautiful. So that's what happens there. And eventually the pod turns brown. It gets really dry and brittle, and you can almost shake them inside, and that's when the beans are ready to harvest. And so it's so great with beans is, again, there's a really low chance of cross-pollination because they're asexual. And they're good for seed to start with seed keeping. Squash, on the other hand, is just as promiscuous as corn. And so I'm just realizing a mistake I made in my own garden. I have these beautiful Virginia tobacco blossoms growing, and I got some Cuban tobacco blossoms growing, so I'm gonna have to bag some of the other Cuban blossoms to make sure they don't cross-pollinate and not save any of the seeds from the ones that are open, because these tobacco varieties, even though they're different varieties, they will cross-pollinate. So with this process, right, it's a little bit different. These guys need other plants or other flowers to pollinate from. So they open, they go in there, rub themselves around, and then go to another flower. See, you got a little guy in there. And then they pollinate, they dry off, and then the little seed pods kind of hang out in here. See? There's one. There's a few here from our first blossom, so I'm happy to see that. Each little pod has thousands of tobacco seeds. So we're gonna have a lot of tobacco seeds. So this is Virginia tobacco. And these three over there are Havana tobacco, which is Cuban tobacco. So for us, that's an ancestral seed. And our people are tobacco people. Everybody's probably familiar with Cuban cigars. So that's that process. But squash, I wanted to do this earlier in the day, but my day was taking me somewhere else. So here with squash, highly promiscuous plants, yet there's many species. So here in this row we have some kasha squash. It's a Tohono O'odham. And so I believe, and I could ask somebody, but my understanding is that these seeds originated south of the border. But as we know, the O'odham, their lands have been separated by colonially and enforced border that doesn't really exist. So that makes sense, right? So with squash, right, we have the beautiful female. So this blossom here that you can see, barely, where is it? There it is. Right, that beautiful little round thing. Yeah, that's a squash. That's a baby. That's a little squash ovum, right? And that's the flower. And the flower hasn't opened. When the flower opens, it kind of gets like that. So clearly this one's opened, and they drop right off. They're done pollinating, and then the squash will grow. And so this is exciting, obviously, because, you know, these squashes aren't from here. And even though they've grown at least 1 year up north, because we got these from my relatives in Onondaga, they're not adapted to the north. So this is really great and exciting. And I've never grown kasha, and so that's great. So why I was hoping this could happen earlier in the day was, so this squash here, we got a fruit, and this one already opened. So when the flowers open, so I'm going to take this off because it's going to be just fine, right? We got some bugs in there, and then we have this beautiful little situation in here. And so this is the female flower, and you need the pollen from the male flower, right? So the bugs go into the male flowers, which the male flowers, they don't have that fruit at the bottom. They just got that long stem here. And so there's a little, here, I'll pick this off. It's done. It's got this little, now I'm no botanist, but this is what the male flower looks like, right? It's pretty much of a phallic structure. And so basically the little bugs and the bees come in here, get the pollen, travel to the next one in the morning because this place was buzzing, and the pollen gets in there, right? And so also, if we, let's say, had only one squash, and we're trying to really preserve a certain variety and make sure it had good pollination. This is the process of hand pollinating squash, right? Yeah, you just rub it all in there. Do, 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 do. There's a lot of pollen in here, so I'm just shaking it out. And then what you would do is kind of paper clip it shut and or clothespin it shut to make sure nothing else can get in there after you're done pollinating it. And that's that process of but squash, it's pretty promiscuous, right? So we have two very different varieties of squash. So this Kashaw is a curcubit. I don't remember the species of it. And then this squash over here is red curry, which is also a curcubit. And I'm not remembering the species off the top of my head, but I do know, because I have it written down somewhere, that they are different species. So the chance of cross-pollination is very small. And everybody's got different teachings around pollination and whatnot. And so, you know, you go with what you're told, and that's, you know, it's important. And you follow your teachings. And I'm grateful to have been given some of those. You know, and basically with the squash, you know, they're abundant. They're a plant of abundance. Same with the beans, same with the corn. You know, one squash, as we know, you open it up and it has many, many seeds in it. You know, one squash, you get one squash to grow, and then, you know, you get many more from that. And, you know, for us, that's, you know, that's us establishing sovereignty as a people, growing our own seeds like that, you know. But also, you know, the seeds have their own sovereignty as well. And, you know, similar to, you know, humans for reference, the seeds, they, how do I say it, right? So the seeds, so the seeds, they have their rights, you know. And our belief as Indigenous people, when a child is born, it has its own path, and our role as humans, as parents, is to only guide that child and not tell it what it needs to do, and not indoctrinate a child into a certain way. Allow them to figure it out on their own, and treat the child as sacred. You know, so that's what we do with our seeds. They're the same thing. You know, they provide nourishment for the survival of our people. So we protect them with our lives and ensure that they're sustained in a way where you're not desecrating the lineage of each seed, because each seed comes from a people that comes with a story. And to sell that seed or to patent that seed, you're taking away somebody's rights. So all of those seeds have their own rights, and it's important to maintain that those seeds are kept in a way where you're not changing its genetics at all. So this brings in the conversation about Monsanto and their horrible practices, pesticides, you know, herbicides, anything that's going to alter the structure of the plant, because eventually after a time they become sensitive to it, and so that changes the genes, and that's not good. And Indigenous people globally have been keeping their seeds, you know, as best they can, and trading with other people and doing their best to ensure that you know, the lineage of our seeds and our food don't die, because those are our relatives that we need to cherish and keep sacred, because with those seeds come our creation stories. And so I guess I'm going to leave us off with a quick, I guess it's not really a story, but so we have this was some really late planted sweet corn. We don't know if we'll get a harvest from it, but we're experimenting with it a little bit. So here, this amaranth, right? Hello, it's so beautiful. This amaranth was shared with us, and the seeds came from Guatemala. And you can see these beautiful tiny little flowers in there. And this is a real sacred seed to the Maya people. And I know other people, but that's my biggest familiarity, right? So we planted these late. We didn't really know what was going to happen. And we're so grateful because, I mean, I don't know if you could see in the background, but when I was just talking, but these guys have to be at least 7 feet tall now. They're just growing like weeds. It's beautiful. But these seeds are real sacred to them, and I don't know the whole story, and you know, that's my job, is to keep learning about it. So, you know, as we keep these seeds sacred, keep growing them and eating them and loving them, you know, that story stays alive with us as well, right? So I need to get up on that story a little bit better. But we're so grateful because these seeds were last grown in Guatemala, right? And so now we planted these late and they've grown this much, and I'm sure we'll get a harvest from them. And so that is real exciting to us. So anyways, my favorite story is, you know, the corn, of course, right? So here, I don't know if we'll get any type of harvest from it. Go to see it at all. I planted it late. But here, this little plant here, kind of looks like corn, right? Well, it's Teosinte, or Teosinte, which is the ancestor to corn. This is where corn came from. This is a wild grass. And, you know, millennia ago, that's what our corn was. And then it was cultivated, and now it's that. And the Teosinte is like, you know, I know one of my friends, she's Maya, Jakaltek Maya Popti, you know, and she shared the story about, the corn, and, you know, there was a volcano, there's a mountain where her people are, and, you know, a star came down, and when it hit the mountain, it brought a seed, and that seed was Teosinte. And Nahuatl, Teosinte means essentially like God's seed, you know, a seed that came from the gods. And when we look at the corn, you know, we see these really strong stalks, and, you know, they provide for the people. You know, their job is to care for the people, you know, and through the corn, we got our corn mothers, you know, the women who protected those cornfields, who, you know, like that, also protected the families, the children, you know, their people. And eventually those corn mothers, their names changed to clan mothers. And now our clan mothers are highly esteemed elders in our communities that watch our communities grow, help them grow, guide them to grow, and are the women that are the backbone. And like that, when we look at the Teosinte, where that came from, you know, the way the seeds are together, they grow, They resemble the spine, like that. So these are the things that, you know, I think about when I'm growing food and tending to our seeds and harvesting them, making sure that they're okay. These are the types of stories and teachings that, you know, go around in my head. So every time I'm out here, you know, in the field, in the milpa, you know, tending to these seeds and seeing how the land is taking to them, and, you know, seeing the land transform every time we plant more seeds. You know, I also grow as well. And so this is what we do here, you know. By no means is it just me. We're a whole community, you know, and it's the seeds that bring us together. It's the seeds that hold us together. And it's the seeds that keep us growing. So, you know, I wouldn't say that we are permaculturalists by any means. You know, we're just doing right by our ancestors and listening to our elders and listening to what the seeds are telling us to do and how to interact with each other, you know? And that's how our community grows. You know, you work with the soil, you heal your traumas, you know, together in community. So this is what we do. And it's been an amazing process. And I'm grateful for Joe and his family for taking me in and allowing me to have the space to see this through in that way, you know? Because it's our duty as like the younger generation to, you know, not just leave this work on the elders. You know, our elders carry these stories and tell us what to do, but it's our job to do it. And if we don't do it, then nobody else is going to. So, thank you.
Hi, so we're back in real Zoom time here. I guess we have 25 minutes left or so. I'll let Giovanna, you know, run the breakout groups and everything. And then I guess, I don't know, Giovanna, is now the time for a breakout question?
Yeah, sure, if you're ready for that.
Never ready, but here we go.
Okay. Sweet. Oops. So the question for the day, which is a two-part question, is what do you know about intergenerational trauma, and what are some ways we can heal from it? That's the question.
And how long did you want to take in these breakout rooms?
Oh, I don't know. What do you say, like 10 minutes?
Yeah, that sounds good. So we'll come back around 1:15 or so. So you'll all be prompted to join the breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I think we are all back now.
Hi. Is this everybody?
Yep, I think we are all back.
Sweet. So, wow, I feel like we just like, if there was ever a moment where I feel like we just really like hit the tip of the iceberg, it just happened. I don't know how everybody else feels. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that to us. So I guess I'm just going to kind of I guess we should have like Q&A. But I just want to jump to a few different things and just briefly mention, because I think it would be great to just end this in discussion, that there's just a few programs that we're actively doing right now at TCIKH. The Equitable Food Access Initiative for this year, we fully subsidized in collaboration with Healthy Food for All and a few different local farms, West Haven Farm, Fort Baptist Farm, to fully subsidize CSAs for the BIPOC community. We hope to do it again next year because it was really awesome. And then also we're currently embarking on a new project called Seeds for Sovereignty, where we're hoping to, well, we are collaborating with Groundswell and the Learning Farm and their program Quarter Acre for People to be able to work on land linking, to be able to create larger land access for people in the area, but also on our part, create a larger seed bank and seed library and connect more Indigenous people to some of their homelands here. It would be really ideal for that to happen, but it may not. And otherwise, I just want to acknowledge our relatives on the islands who have given us a lot of information, particularly our family, our extended family in Cuba, that has made a lot of our programming possible because we exchange information with them and it helps keep us connected to our culture. So I just wanted to say that, and I'm just going to I'm just going to share my screen again for one last slide, because for us it's essential for what we do here. So do you want to read it?
Sure. In the beginning, we were free. We understood the original instructions given to our people at the beginning of time. In our return to nature, we will once again be free because we will have deeply understood the sacrifices of those who went before us. It is their prayer we are answering, whether we are cognizant of that or not. Where we come from is where we belong. This is our source of spiritual power that only we can give away. As we heal from our traumas, we return to that place within ourselves. We return to nature.
And so I hope that really kind of encompasses this whole presentation and thoughts that we had. And otherwise, want to just leave this up to discussion or Q&A, because that's that. And here's all of this, and I guess I can leave this up for now.
So feel free to unmute yourselves, or if you would like to type something into the chat, I can relay to the group.
I'm just reading through some of the comments in the chat right now as like responses to the breakout groups. And I think that, I mean, one, it seems like a couple people mentioned, so I think it was a popular conversation topic, that safe places are necessary to heal intergenerational trauma. Because I think that's really important and everybody deserves to feel safe.
And if anyone would like to share anything back from their breakout group, feel free to do that as well.
Hi, my name is Jordan. I use he and they pronouns. I'm joining from homelands of lots of folks, Sioux Nations and the Menominee, Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, Peoria. So here in this area called the Western Suburbs of Chicago. And yeah, just really appreciating the space and appreciating the video and to meet all of these incredible beings that are holding seeds and life and the work that you all are continuing on from your ancestors. And I was just looking at the link to the website and, looking through some of the words and noticing you talk about a matrilineal way of life. And so I guess I would just wonder if you could talk a bit more about that, sort of this matrilineal way of life and how that connects with what you're sharing on seeds and healing.
Yeah, so returning to matrilineal way of life for us acknowledges first that we all came from a woman who gave birth, whether it's that is your mother or you can recognize that as the Earth Mother, and understanding that we have to return to acknowledging those truths in order to actually kind of move forward in human society where we're walking in balance with all of nature. For us, this brings up a really deep conversation about our protocols and how we work as a community that we are a part of. Arausibaniku Maisigwani is a Taino community, and we are matrilineal. And so that means, in essence, that, in practice, if we were as a community to have an issue come up or any type of topic for conversation that was really necessary, what would happen would be that the women would come together and discuss this topic, and they would bring it to the men. The men would also have their conversations as well. And we would bring these conversations together, but ultimately it is the men's role to listen to the women and respect the women, as is the women should be respecting and listening to the men. But our understanding is that, the grandmothers that are the oldest have the most experience and have given life in a way where the elder men have not. And this actually goes back to a story of the corn, because the word clan mother actually derived from corn mother and the way that the women looked after the cornfields and their understanding of the cosmologies because of that role that they played in their community. And so when we talk about matrilineal, it actually connects the human to the larger cosmovision of humanity and the way that in order to remain in balance, there are certain things that we have to acknowledge, including the inherent power of women as birth givers. I would like Joe to elaborate on that because I didn't touch everything.
Yeah, and it's not a matter of gentrification, matrilineal way. It's very different from matriarchal. Matriarchal society is based on a sole rule that the women are the sole person that has the say. It's kept in balance. When we talk about matrilineal way, I came from my mother. My daughters came from their mothers. My daughter's children will come from her who is a mother. So we follow that line. It doesn't extract from our ability to exercise our sovereignty as men. So it's not a power play, in essence. It's a sharing of equal power. That's what it is. It's a sharing of equal power based upon the stories, the cultural stories that get handed down from one generation to the next. And that's what keeps that matrilineal way of life. So much so that even after so much colonization and so much oppression and devastation, if you look at some of the cultures, like that you mentioned, and you look at some of the, what people call Latinos, we're not Latinos because we don't come from Latin, and we're not Hispanic because we're not Spanish. We're native people from this land. But when you go to their homes and you look at some of the customs, that are being played out quietly with even no knowledge. It's subconsciously still being played out, that there's a matrilineal aspect to that community. And that's where community becomes really important, because these shared knowledges are still happening. So when we talk about matrilineal way, we're not talking about exercising the power, we're talking about sharing that power. The women at one point were the ones that harvest the gardens, they put up the teepees, they build the bohíos, they manage what happened in the community while the men went out fishing, hunting, doing whatever we did. And to secure the safety and the survivability of the community. So everyone really had their say, but when it came to really important decisions that were going to affect the community as a whole, it was done, through the clan mothers and the women. The women got together, they discussed the issue. They looked at the viability of those issues because, who's going to protect the children? So everything had its place in a sort of balanced sort of kind of way. So I don't know if that answers your question. And then one other thing that Alexis made an important point on, well, there's like for the Taino, there's two that I know of, and I heard in my home, I don't see this or hear about it as much, of two foods that were really integral, that created that balance. It was the corn, the maíz, that's what we call it, maíz, because it came from the heavens, and the yuca, which also came from the heavens as well, but one was masculine and one was feminine. A yuca, who was considered a feminine deity, a masculine deity. And corn, we look at corn and we can translate that as Atave, who was the earth mother who brought water and life and to the world, as we know it in our cosmology. I might be a little bit off point there because, I'm not a historian, but I am a knowledge keeper for my community. So when I look at Matrilineal and the importance of why we created our organization in that manner, is if we're going to return to nature, we can't leave that out, because that's the missing link for us. Where is our women? Why are women walking behind us and not with us? So we're kind of like decolonizing ourselves in that manner, as well as we're bringing the women to be in line with us as well. And that's part of that gives that pollination to the seed.
Thank you.
And I know it is 1:30, so we are short for time, but I just wanted to let everyone know, if you, Joe and Alexis, were open to it, I think we could have time for one more comment or question.
Sure. Thank you for everybody who's just saying thank you. And Nicole, I hope that there will be open houses for our community in a more organized fashion. COVID has really kind of been a real interesting situation for us, particularly because, Ithaca's already really pretty rural, and we live probably in one of the least accessible places outside of Ithaca. So that sucks, and we hope to fix this somehow. But we have opened up a office in downtown Ithaca recently, which we're still painting it like it's that new, which is going to be our gane, where we can start sharing things in a more accessible place.
Well, thank you so much, Joe and Alexis, for spending time with us and educating us all today. I really appreciate it, and it's super inspiring as always.
thank you for having us and for allowing us to be a part of this community.
Of course.
Yeah, and if anybody's curious, like we're on Facebook, Traditional Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Healing. I posted our emails a moment ago. Our website, we're pretty accessible on the internet because we've had to be. So yeah, please, any questions or thoughts, or if you just want to talk, like we're literally around all of the time.
Especially lately, right?
Yeah. So, and thank you, Giovanna and Groundswell, for hosting us. It's been
You guys are great.
kind of a trip to like be here doing this, because the last time I was like in this office was before COVID, and I was like working for Groundswell, so so this is different. But thank you.